Imagine waking up and the map of your entire life has just been completely rewritten.
Oh, man.
Like the streets you walk every single day, the name of your town, the very language printed on the street signs, it's all just been swapped out while you were sleeping.
Just entirely gone.
Exactly. And the people who swapped it out are, looking you right in the eye, telling you that your old map never even existed in the first place.
Which is such a deeply unsettling thought.
It really is. That absolute upending of reality is basically the premise of our deep dive today. We are looking at a really powerful book called Stolen by Olga Forin. And our mission today is to explore this profound theme of systemic theft.
Right. And it's important to clarify, we aren't talking about, stolen wallets or someone breaking into your car.
No. We are talking about the theft of history, the theft of land, of identity, and ultimately how people manage to reclaim what was taken from them.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating framework for looking at human history. And just as a quick note for you listening, Forin's book touches on some intensely debated political and historical systems.
Definitely.
So our goal today isn't to, take a side or endorse these specific viewpoints. Our mission is simply to unpack her arguments impartially, look at the evidence she presents, and really just understand the mechanics of her perspective so you can evaluate it for yourself.
Right. Because the text uses these historical grievances as a lens to examine how our very identities are constructed today and sometimes extracted.
Extracted, exactly.
So to really understand the sheer magnitude of that extraction, Forin sets up this structure in 3 phases. And the first phase is the before. You really can't grasp what was stolen unless you understand what originally existed.
You have to establish that baseline.
Exactly. And Olga Forin paints a picture of this before state as a time of just incredible wholeness. Identity was intrinsically tied to community and to nature.
It was a completely different paradigm.
It was. It's less like owning a house where you hold a deed that proves it's yours, and it's more like being a cell inside a larger body. The cell doesn't, own the bloodstream.
Right, it's just an integrated part of it.
Yeah, a functioning part. People were whole without needing to prove it. You belonged to something that needed no permission. It's like looking at the original source code of humanity before this massive corrupting virus was introduced into the system.
That source code analogy is so useful here. Because in the modern world, we are constantly asked to define ourselves, right?
All the time.
We have to prove our worth through our labor output or our social status. But this before period suggests a state where you were defined simply by your being.
By just existing.
Exactly. You were spirit, tribe, lineage, just woven directly into the land. So I guess the question for you is, how does this deep foundational wholeness make the subsequent theft so much more devastating than just a physical displacement?
Well, because it wasn't just moving people from point A to point B. If your identity is a function of an ecosystem, physically moving you isn't just relocation. It's an existential unmooring. They were severing people's framework of reality.
Yeah, the roots themselves. And you see that deep tethering in the way naming worked, too.
Oh, the naming section was incredible.
It really was. Olga Forin notes that names weren't just labels of convenience. They weren't just, random syllables slapped on a birth certificate for administrative tracking.
Right, like we do now.
Exactly. They held the massive weight of lineage. She notes that names translated to things like lion or river or first light. Beloved.
And they were literally sung into birth.
Sung into birth. A name was an absolute anchor. And that anchoring extended to the concept of labor and geography as well.
How so?
Well, work was considered sacred. It was built for community rather than wealth accumulation. And the land wasn't owned. It was known.
Known, right.
Yeah. Rivers weren't bound by rigid borders. You didn't draw a line on a map. Rivers were followed.
Which just makes the transition into the second phase, the actual theft, so jarring.
Oh, it's devastating.
Because if this before state was so deeply rooted, the perpetrators couldn't just steal the land. The systemic theft wasn't a quick smash and grab.
No, not at all.
It was a calculated architectural dismantling of humanity, beyond just the physical.
The mechanics of it are genuinely chilling. To dismantle a rooted identity, you have to sever the mechanisms of intergenerational transfer.
The passing down of knowledge.
Exactly. You start with language and names. Olga Forin explains how people were rebranded. They were assigned numbers or names meant for property.
Which psychologically reduces a human being to an asset.
Yes. And mother tongues were actively outlawed, which means you're not just policing vocabulary. You are burning the bridge between a child and their grandparents.
making the oral history totally inaccessible. The imagery she uses for that severance is just harrowing. Children forced to cry in unrecognizable accents because their true languages were forbidden.
But what's fascinating and kind of beautiful in a tragic way is how those languages went underground to survive.
Right, they hid inside drum beats.
Drum beats, the complex spice profiles of regional food, lullabies.
But the systemic extraction wasn't just abstract concepts like language, it was applied violently to the physical body. And this brings us to the concept of stolen wombs.
Yeah, that is a heavy section.
It's deeply unsettling. Olga Forin details how the wombs of marginalized women were literally colonized as breeding grounds for empire. Mothers having their milk taken to feed a child who would one day call her nurse, but never mother.
It's the ultimate long-term investment for an oppressor.
Yeah.
The literal production of future free labor.
And we see variations of this architectural theft applied to culture and labor globally, too, like art from colonized regions being labeled primitive.
Right.
But then the conquerors would copy those exact techniques, strip the original creators' names away, and commercialize it.
And she talks about the Asian diaspora in this context, too. Brought across oceans to build railroads, treated as expendable cheap labor, mocked in cartoons.
Yet deemed, quote-unquote, too useful to be gone.
Exactly. The system wanted the labor and the infrastructure, but actively rejected the humanity of the people providing it.
You know, it's relatively easy to conceptualize stealing land or stealing labor. Those are tangible things, but I really want to talk about the theft of intangible things.
Like stolen safety and stolen joy.
Yes, because how does a systemic power structure actually steal a feeling? It's easy to steal a physical object, but a feeling like joy.
It steals a feeling by manipulating the environment to make that feeling impossible to sustain naturally.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Think about safety. Forin argues that safety became a privilege that marginalized people had to simulate. They had to learn to constantly check behind them.
View badges as inherent threats.
Right. You aren't safe, you are just temporarily unbothered. And joy operates on a similar mechanism.
Because communal joy is actually a profound threat to an oppressive system.
Exactly. When a community shares unfiltered organic joy, they build solidarity. They recognize their shared humanity.
Which makes them much harder to subjugate.
So the system steals joy by making it conditional. Allowed only on command for the entertainment or the comfort of the oppressors, it makes happiness feel like something that has to be earned.
Okay, so that brings us to the third phase of Forin's framework, expanding the definition of theft. Because this machinery didn't just stop in the past.
No, it constantly evolves. It shapeshifts.
Right, it finds new targets. For example, she frames war as a massive engine of theft.
Stealing peace by handing people flags.
Yeah, turning brothers into blades. Dividing interconnected land, quote, like a loaf of bread and forcing people to bleed for borders they didn't even draw.
It's a powerful way to look at modern conflict. And the book also expands this lens to marginalized communities within our own societies.
The erasure of history.
Yes, LGBTQ plus history being erased, caged in closets, labeled unnatural.
And there is that profoundly striking spoken word section focused on the disabled community, highlighting the theft of personal agency.
That part really stays with you.
It does. The quote that anchors it is, "My chair is not your symbol. You erased me in the name of help." Reducing a complex person to a flat, feel-good narrative for someone else's benefit.
But arguably the most pervasive evolution of systemic theft she discusses is modern capitalism, the digital age.
Okay, yes, let's get into this. She argues that time became a currency.
Your scroll is a sale, your selfie's a file. We are monetized motion.
So we think of the internet and social media as these free public squares, right? But Olga Forin frames them as a new kind of invisible enclosure where we are the product being harvested.
Exactly.
But I have to push back slightly here because equating a violent historical displacement to me voluntarily scrolling on social media, I mean, isn't that a stretch?
Well, it depends on how you look at the mechanics of choice.
Because I choose to post. I choose to log on. Is capitalism really the ultimate, most insidious form of theft precisely because it tricks us into willingly participating in our own extraction?
That is the exact tension the text wants you to grapple with. Historical theft required violent physical force. Modern algorithmic capitalism is infinitely more efficient because it extracts cognitive and emotional labor without you even realizing it's happening.
So the choice is kind of an illusion.
Yeah, engineered by thousands of designers working to hijack your dopamine receptors. The system monetizes your attention, your pain.
Turning grief into a trend.
Exactly. Packaging struggles into slogans. Systemic theft constantly evolves to extract whatever is most valuable in any given era.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's like convincing the homeowner to slowly dismantle their own house and hand you the bricks.
That's a great way to put it.
But the book doesn't leave us stranded in that enclosure.
Thankfully, no.
We pivot to the final phase, the after, the reclamation. If the theft was methodical and silent, the reclamation is deeply personal, defiant, and loud.
The fierce, active reclaiming of the self. And what's vital here is that this isn't a polite request to be included. It is a refusal to negotiate one's humanity.
We see that beautifully in taking back the voice and the name, reclaiming identity in podcasts, in pulpits, and in protests.
Refusing to shorten names for someone else's comfort.
Yes, correcting mispronunciations without an apology. Just forcing the dominant culture to stretch its mouth to accommodate your true name.
And taking back the land and the story. Protesting pipelines, but also just planting tomatoes. Naming children after rivers that conquerors tried to drain.
Turning scraps into scripture. Tearing the sanitized narrative out of the textbooks and rewriting history in tattoos, music, and rhythm.
And I really appreciate how the book introduces a new framework for understanding the diaspora.
Right, framing it not just as a tragedy of dislocation, but as the ultimate survival technology.
Yes, carrying ancestors in backpacks. Learning to grow with no soil and still finding a way to bloom.
Which brings up a really profound philosophical question for me. When you actively fight to reclaim what was stolen, whether it's a language or your own psychological safety, can you ever truly get the exact original thing back? Or does the act of surviving the theft force you to build something entirely new?
Well, Olga Foran's conclusion is that the reclaimed self is not the fragile before. You can't unring that bell.
Right.
It is a reinforced, unstealable hybrid. She states emphatically, we are what we survive. They aren't just survivors. They are the architects of a new, bolder wholeness that refuses to stay in pieces.
A wholeness that knows exactly how it was broken.
Yes, exactly.
So we've gone on quite a journey today for you listening, from that beautiful baseline of human wholeness through the brutal machinery of historical and modern theft.
The theft of names, wombs, safety, joy.
Right up to the algorithms harvesting our attention today. And finally, that unapologetic reclamation of identity, land, and voice.
It really challenges us to look at our society as an ongoing negotiation of what we allow to be taken from us.
Yeah, it does. And to leave you with a final thought to mull over, I want to look at Olga Foran's concluding poem, The Great Human Theft. The book asks this staggering question. Is our modern world just a high-tech shrine to everything we buried?
Ah.
Yeah. Noting that humanity has upgraded everything except the soul.
Upgraded everything except the soul. That is powerful.
So here's the provocation for you, the listener. If human attention is the currency of modern capitalist theft, what happens when you actively choose to stop spending it on the systems that harvest you? What is one piece of your soul, your time, your joy, your name, that you will absolutely refuse to let the future steal tomorrow?